So, Evan Harris, the theme for your speech at the CFPS conference was Leveson's challenge, who guards the Guardians? What's the answer?
Well, the first thing to say is a very difficult question, because if the Guardians are doing the guarding, that is keeping an eye on everything, there's no one left to keep an eye on them, or, in this case, they're extremely powerful and people are scared to guard them, or you lose the power of the press. So normally, if you see a scandal in an industry, you take the exclusive to a newspaper. Well, if the industry is the newspapers, it's much more difficult. We cannot get any expose of press misconduct into most of the newspapers. The Guardian are bored with us. So it's quite, on a serious matter, it is very difficult. What's the answer? Well, in the end, it comes down to Parliament. Okay, in a democracy, Parliament has to decide, and Parliament has decided. But what was unique about this decision was that there was three-party agreement, and that was essential because divide and rule is something that a powerful interest group would like to do. So in the end, we say Parliament decides, democratically, we identify in opinion polls that there's significant public support, and we make sure that there's a victims group which cares passionately about free speech to make sure, as we did, that the politicians agree to deliver, and hopefully, we'll have to wait a year, actually deliver.
Right. And you touched on this issue of a free press being part of a democracy and vital for accountability. How do you think your proposals and what's currently being looked at will safeguard against political interference with the operation of a free and challenging press?
Well, there's a very interesting discussion to be had about what is meant by a free press. In my view, our view, and the view of most philosophers on this subject, a free press is one that is entirely free, and it's free and across the range. But we don't have in this country a free press. We have free speech for proprietors and editors through their newspapers, and they don't claim, nor are they bound to be balanced and impartial. I'm not suggesting that our newspapers should be bound to be impartial, but let's just be honest about what we're dealing with. So what we say is that there must be no political interference pre-publication, and there must be no industry interference pre-publication, no self-regulator. You don't have to check your words in advance, but there must be independent, effective self-regulation post-publication, but again no political influence. Leveson was very clear about that. You'd think it was straightforward, but all the press have done is say press freedom means we can't have practically any independent oversight. As I say, that's freedom for the proprietors to run amok and destroy people's lives. It's not what true press freedom is about. And some of the countries in the world that have the highest index of press freedom are those that have effective independent self-regulation, or indeed, like the BBC and ITV have, even statutory regulation that's independent of politicians. Leveson wasn't even arguing for that, so I think what he did argue for, somewhat less than that, should definitely be endorsed.
Right. And we're talking at this conference a lot about issues of power and how do we get the right kind of accountability that works most effectively. Do you think the press itself always looks for scapegoats, or what's its role in contributing to a healthy form of public scrutiny?
Well, one thing we're very clear to say is that most of the press is very good, and that there are, in some areas of the newspapers, there is brilliant public interest in investigative journalism. However, there is one area where the press has been very poor at scrutinising, a couple of areas. One is itself, okay, and you can't blame it. Well, you can blame it, but it's understandable that they're not going to do an expose on their editor because they'll lose their job. The editor's not going to do an expose on their proprietor because they'll lose their job. And that has to be recognised. I don't think that the industry recognises that problem. And the second thing is that they are not prepared to analyse what they're doing in respect to policy change that they want to see. So what we're trying to do is to say, look, the press is the press. We do rely on broadcasters, which in this country are bound to be impartial, to provide a safety net. And they're the ones that discovered Savile and did a lot of this lobbygate stuff, so there's good investigative journalism there. But in the end, there has to be effective self-regulation that means that whistleblowers can speak out and that victims can actually get justice and a remedy, which unless they're very rich at the moment is extremely difficult to do.
Thanks very much indeed for speaking to us.